Joining us now to discuss the U.S.-EU trade deal and President Trump's current trip to Scotland are Mike Leon. He's NTD's news contributor as well as the host of the podcast Can We Please Talk? And public policy analyst Michael Busler, who's a professor of finance at Stockton University. Gentlemen, happy Monday morning. Michael Bustler, let's switch things up a little bit and start with you to get your view on the economics of the deal. Can you share your initial reactions?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. This is a huge deal. Last year, the U.S. bought over $600 billion worth of goods from the European Union, which is good, but we only sold a little under $400 billion worth of goods to them, mostly because they had higher tariffs and some quotas and some additional regulations on American products. This deal essentially removes all of that. So we'll have the reciprocal tariffs. What was a sticking point with this, as I mentioned in the program before, is that some countries want some of their industries protected. And as we saw in the last segment, they reached a deal to be able to protect some of the European goods and some of the U.S. goods. The U.S. Wants goods that are vital to national security: steel, aluminum, copper, medical supplies. They want high tariffs on those goods because they want to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. What it really does is open up European markets to American producers. I believe particularly who will do well in this is the agricultural industry. The U.S. is very good at producing food. We produce it very efficiently, and we've been blocked from selling it to many countries in Europe and other parts of the world. This opens that up. One last point, there'll be no tariffs on aircraft, which means that Boeing is free to sell their planes in Europe without any tariff, and the European Union can sell their Airbuses in the U.S. without any tariffs. So this is a great first step. They'll work out the details in the coming days.
Yeah, certainly a historic step forward. Mike Leon, in the lead up to the negotiation, Trump was saying to the press that he wasn't happy about several sticking points, and von der Leyen had expressed that there's probably only a 50-50 chance that they would come away with the deal, yet they were able to get it done. So I'm curious what you think changed in the, if you were a fly on the wall, what was going on? What's Trump's relationship like with von der Leyen?
Yeah, it's a good question. Good morning, first and foremost, to everybody. And I'm glad you started with Michael Busler, because I did want the economic breakdown first before we get to the political breakdown of it, right? Look, Kerry, we've talked about this a bunch on previous segments that we've done together with Michael Busler. It's always been a negotiating ploy. It's always been a strategy. If you look at it just at that high level, if you take just that in isolation and you say he's using this as a blanket negotiation, it's going to be 30%. It's not 30%, right? It got down to 15%, and we can negotiate from there. So I think when you look at it like that, I think he looks at these relationships in the dollar signs, right? And I think that's what's come away from this framework, right? Now they will be taken out to the other countries that are part of the European Commission, and hopefully everything gets agreed upon. But I want to piggyback on something that Ursula did say in the package that rolled before we came on, which was this provides stability, right? And reliability. That's the biggest thing with tariffs. It's the uncertainty. It's what businesses and small business owners will always go back to and say, I just don't know if I'm going to have to spend more to import something. I don't know if I'm going to have the operating budget to make more hires. I don't know if I'm going to have that extra marketing budget to do X, Y, Z that could potentially grow my business. And I think when you get a trade deal and you get the framework agreed upon, now everybody has the number that they know. Now your price point analysis changes. Everything involved in the business, now you have a set number. So now you can work off of that. You can adapt, and you can either grow your business or figure out other ways to grow your business, whether it be this market, that market, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's the biggest thing and my biggest takeaway with all of this. There's no way to spin it like Michael Bustler said. Like, it is a good deal. This is one of our largest trading partners with respect to how many countries are part of the European Trade Commission. So like this is a huge deal for the president, and now everybody has that number set and businesses can act accordingly.
Yeah, you're remarking, of course, on the stability, the markets like stability. Michael Bustler, in terms of the relationship economically with the EU, it wasn't necessarily import tariffs that were the problem for U.S. manufacturers trying to do business in Europe. It was more the overly burdensome regulatory environment, the protectionist value-added taxes. Those don't change that much, do they?
Well, they are going to try to work something out where they do change. Let me just make one comment about what Mike Leon just said. He brought up the point of uncertainty. Business can deal with whatever conditions are thrown at them as long as they know what the conditions are. The most difficult decisions business has to make is when you're making decisions under complete uncertainty, when you don't know what's going to happen. So bringing the certainty into this, now we know, and it's going to make business much easier to expand into markets. The other point is, as you just mentioned, American manufacturers have been closed out of markets forever. And we make good products that should be sold in a lot of these European markets. Now, they'll negotiate to take off a lot of these regulations that are put on. A lot of these quotas that they had will be eliminated. Now we know exactly what the tariff will be on products. Agricultural goods, I think, will be exempt from some of the tariffs going into Europe, and that will help expand U.S. output. One of the functions of this trade policy, or one of the goals, was supposed to be to open foreign markets to U.S. manufacturers. We've had such a negative balance of trade because our tariffs have been relatively low and other countries' tariffs have been relatively high. So we buy a lot from them and they don't buy much from us, leading to that negative balance of trade. This will help reduce that. We'll continue to buy what we buy from Europe. Maybe it'll go down a little bit because of the tariffs, but what they buy from us will be expanded, and we should eliminate that negative balance of trade. And that was one of the primary goals of this, and Trump negotiated this perfectly. He has techniques that he uses. He always says, I'm going to put on an extremely high tariff, and everybody sort of panics, and then he brings it down to what he really wanted in the first place, and he ends up with a good trade deal. This is good for both the United States, for the U.S., and for the European Union.
And Mike Leon, just as we finish up, we just have a little bit more time left. Let's just like to look forward to the evolving trade relationship with China and the politics related to that.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're speaking of large trade partners, right? I think that was something that Howard Lutnick said, that like August 1st, everyone's going to get hit with this, except, and he didn't mention this by name, but the elephant in the room, he said large trading partners will continue to negotiate, right? And so this is the next one that everyone's going to be eyeing. Look, it's one thing to make a deal with Japan, and it's one thing to make a deal with the UK, and it's one thing to make a deal with the European Union, and the president has touted these victories, but everybody knows that China is our North Star, let's say, for lack of a good term, in terms of the trading partner that we're, trying to defeat, right? As Michael Bustler's nodding along, I would think he would nod along with that. So I know that this is going to be one talk that we're all going to be, watching. The tariffs, to Michael Bustler's point earlier, was 145% 1 month, 125% 1 month. That causes instability and stuff like that with respect to different businesses. So I think everybody's going to be watching how this plays out, and we're going to see what this actual eventual number gets to. And that's something that everybody has to keep an eye on. But like you said, Kerry, they're also a global superpower, right? And so we know that there's military aspects to this as well with respect to the negotiations. So I'm interested to see how it all plays out over the next couple of months, and we'll see where we get on that front.
Yeah, and Michael Bustler, maybe you could weigh in briefly. I could see you're chomping at the bit there, so please.
Yeah, China knows that they have to make a deal. Trump put those ridiculously high tariffs that will clobber the Chinese economy. Their economy is doing very poorly now. They can't afford to have to lose some of their American business. So they've got to come up with a deal. And it's not just economics. There'll be a lot of politics involved with this, the rare earth minerals, those kind of things. This will end up being very good for the U.S. and for China. It should help their economy too. They're on the verge of collapse in China. They've really got to make this deal relatively soon.
Really a major turning point in trade, both with the EU and China. So much to discuss. Appreciate your insights this Monday morning. Mike Leon, Michael Bustler. Thank you, gentlemen.
My pleasure.
Thank you.